Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us today for this new series we're calling Resilient Together. My name is Holly Abeals. I'm a Florida Sea Grant Extension Agent with the University of Florida IFAS Extension in Brevard County, and I'm joined by several colleagues who will be all talking with you over the next several weeks about this topic. This series kind of came out of another program we offered earlier this year called Climate Smart Floridians. And we wanted to do a greater focus sort of on resiliency within the home and within the community and kind of things to look for to be more resilient regarding both climate, but also storms, flooding, other things like that that you might be seeing within your communities. So a couple housekeeping to start. This is being recorded, and so please stay muted. And if you don't want your video showing in the recording, you can keep your videos off for that. Closed captioning is available within Zoom. So maybe if you click on at the very bottom of the screen within Zoom, there's like a 3 dots within a circle that says more. And if you click on that, there is an option to show captions. And so that can be offered on your end so you can see what people are saying. And it also designates who's speaking. If maybe Megan, if you have a second, if you can put that in the chat where people can go to turn on closed captioning, then we can make sure everyone sees that. So today we're going to be talking about climate resilience. So we're just going to start off right at the bat to sort of define what that is so we can all be on the same page as we move forward. But up here is the schedule for the next 6 weeks, so you know sort of where we're going. Next week, we'll talk about understanding your risk. We'll have a discussion about preparing and recovery. We'll go into gray infrastructure resilience and then environmental or green infrastructure resilience, that's often called. And then our last week is sort of a bonus. As we're moving along within this series, any questions that you have in the chat that we can't answer at the time, we're going to compile all those and sort of have a session just answering your questions. And so that will be on our last week when we meet on August 31st. So please ask your questions. You can put them in the chat at any time, and myself and others within the team will try to answer those as best we can or document them so we can answer them at the end of our session. So without further ado, I want to introduce Carrie Stevenson. She is our speaker for today, and she will be talking about climate resilience. So welcome, Carrie.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Again, thank you all for being here. We are a statewide team, and I think we have people from all over the state. If you want to put in the chat where you're joining from, we'd be interested to hear who our audience is. I am located up in Escambia County in Pensacola. So if you look at that little map of Florida there and you go to the top of it and go left, that's my county outline all the way over there in Escambia County. So I'll give some examples from our area, but most of this information is relevant to the entire state. It's geared to any Floridian. So hopefully you will find this useful and interesting. So we'll jump right in to Climate Resilience 101. So first off, just a definition of resilience. You'll find different ones all over, depending on where you look. But one of the ones I like is the capacity of an individual or a community exposed to hazards to adapt, either by resisting or changing your own behavior, so they can reach and maintain an acceptable level of function and structure. Simplifying that, it's basically your resilience is determined by the capability to organize and learn from past experiences, or just simply the ability to bounce back So you're hit with a disaster, looking at my flow chart here, uh, ideally work together to recover from that disaster. You learn from it. So the next time you're hit with one, you can recover faster and learn more. And then the cycle continues. We're not going to get any fewer disasters. And so the best way to deal with it is to get resilient and learn how to recover. So community resilience looks like having intact roads and bridges. During a storm or a disaster, you often have bridges go out, road damage. You get impacts to wastewater treatment plants and drinking water. So having safe and functioning drinking and wastewater treatment, accessible airports, hospitals, and emergency services, those big infrastructure pieces that are not just that are maintained by a community, and having open schools. So that's a resilient community is hopefully going to return to those things as soon as you can. Whereas individually, it looks like having a strong home, having a weatherproofing that allows you to withstand a hurricane or a flood or anything else. Having access to a vehicle so you can evacuate or you can get to work or you can get to safety, and a vehicle that works and functions and that you can find fuel for. Um, Looking at landscape health and resilience. So trees are a huge issue in hurricanes and windstorms. They can cause a lot of damage, but there are a lot of things to make sure that you're safe with healthy trees in your yard. Um, your own financial status and recovery during a disaster often their disasters are very expensive. You're paying for repairs, you're paying for extra supplies. You may have to stay somewhere else. If you evacuate, people may be out of work because their places of business are closed, and so it can be very expensive. So and it can take a long time to get money back uh, from your insurance or from state and federal uh, agencies. So that's important as well. And then, of course, personal health. Managing your own health and stress level in the midst of a disaster. So I figured I'd start with a little personal story of resilience and just to give examples on how all of these things can kind of touch, my own family and then how it, expands beyond the community. These pictures were all taken in September 2004. That's me on the top right. At the time, I had we were it was our fifth anniversary, wedding anniversary. I had been working for Extension for not quite a year. Um, I had a baby soon after starting. That's him. He's 22 now, so it's been a while. But took a trip to Cedar Key. We were to celebrate our anniversary. I was going back to work from maternity leave in mid-September. Um, and if you lived here in 2004, you know that we had a crazy hurricane season. I think we went through the whole alphabet of names into the Greek letters. It just was a little wild. Cedar Key had already been, and Central Florida had already been hit by Charlie and Francis. As we walked through the shops in Cedar Key, everybody had TVs and radios on to the weather and the news because it was this other storm called Ivan heading that way, and they were all kind of panicky. The longer we stayed there, the more we realized it was going north and west, and it was headed straight towards our backyard. This is a picture of Ivan's satellite image. Um, you can see it was a huge storm. It was a Category 3, which is not nearly as strong as they get, but it was had a huge impact on our community. Uh, the waves there, that's during the middle of the storm over in Navarre, and that pile of debris there are trees that were um, knocked down and damaged in the storm. We lost probably 30% of our tree canopy in that hurricane. And so personally, we prepared our house best we could. We didn't have storm shutters or anything. We got some water and food. Left my husband in Pensacola with the house, and I evacuated with the baby because we knew we'd probably be out of power. Um, as it turns out, we were out of power for 3 weeks. We didn't have water for 10 days. And so we weren't really prepared for that. We didn't have a generator. We did our own resilience. We learned from that mistake and got a generator. The closest one he could find was in Nashville, because you think about it, your entire region is impacted when you have a storm. I mean, when I was in Birmingham, we were getting wind and rain from this hurricane down in Pensacola, and so um, we now have a generator. We got storm shutters after the fact. The picture on the top right, when I got back to work, I had to start handing out ice, water, and MREs for people who couldn't access food or water because we were all just kind of devastated. Um, again, we lost a huge number of trees. And as I got back to work, we started getting a lot of people calling about um, wanting arborists, asking about trees. They were telling us they were cutting every tree down in their yard because they didn't want to lose their roof to the next storm. And we realized that people were panicking and not thinking clearly about what they might do to damage the landscape and the broader community ecosystem health. And so, one of the first educational programs I ended up doing after these storms was teaching people about tree health, proper planting. We got considerable funding from Florida Forest Service to pay for trees. We gave out thousands of them, educated probably 2,500 people on proper tree planting and care. And I still hear from people who got trees back in '05 or '06 who have these mature wind resistant trees. We use that research based information from previous studies on what the most wind resistant species were, and we give those out. So again, that's sort of our minimal version of having this disaster of Hurricane Ivan. The community worked together to recover. We learned a lot. And so when we got another hurricane the very next year, um, my own home, we had a generator so we could, run some fans in our refrigerator. And then had more, we had storm shutters and those sorts of things. And we knew which trees, we'd lost trees, but we knew which ones to plant back. And so, um, again, it's a difficult thing to go through, but it's the more you're prepared, the better you are able to recover and handle these sort of things. So there's a lot of hazards that we can expect in Florida. We're a kind of semi-tropical state surrounded by water with a lot of humidity. We're absolutely going to expect tropical storms and hurricanes, the tornadoes and lightning that come with them. On the other extreme, we also have issues with drought and wildfire that often comes from that drought with lightning strikes striking dry areas and causing considerable fires that can devastate communities. Flooding may be part of a tropical storm or hurricane, but it could be just a heavy rain. So these two photos on the left, those are from were in the news just last week. It's a national, publication that's talking about the wildfire season and its intensity. With more drought, you have more propensity toward fires that can be more devastating. And not just it's not just the community that has the wildfires. There's the surrounding areas that have the smoke. You have the people who are responding. I have a cousin who lives in Mississippi, and he is responding to a fire in British Columbia. So it affects, not only the communities that are impacted, but the ones that are sending firefighters. There are several who were lost recently in the fires. And here in the middle, we've got Tropical Storm Bertha that came through our area just last week. Thankfully, it was not super strong. We got a little bit of rain and some wind. It kind of cooled the temperatures down, so it wasn't bad, but it's definitely a reminder. This picture on the right, this was my neighborhood about 10 years ago. We had an unexpected rainstorm that in April that dropped 25 inches of rain in 24 hours, and it caused more damage than just about any hurricane that had hit us. And we had no preparation. We didn't have any warning. It was just, it's supposed to rain tonight. And you can see this is a residential street that was completely washed away. And those little smoke geysers there, that's gas lines that were spewing gas out into the air. It was pretty incredible. Now, there's some other Florida hazards that we may not expect. These are also in my community in the last 15 years. The oil spill of 2010, this was Pensacola Beach, and the oil slick that hit that community. That was not only an environmental disaster, but an economic one. Any of you who live in a coastal beach town, you know that um, an oil spill hitting during essentially spring break in April, that you're recovering from the entire summer. Um, Up here, spring and summer are our biggest seasons, not so much the winter, and so that devastated the entire restaurant tourism industry. Um, all the people who work in the service industry. It was a, again, not one that we necessarily expected. Um, if there's a silver lining to the oil spill, it's that there was so much fine money levied on the companies responsible for the oil spill that we have a lot of funding for environmental restoration projects along the Gulf now. So that's only the probably one of the only positives of it. And we did learn a lot about uh, how the Gulf deals with oil and how to better treat it if something like that happens in the future. This other photo on the right, again, unexpected. This is my backyard in January a couple of years ago. We had 8 to 10 inches of snow, and that was just crazy. But the same way you would prepare again for a blizzard is what you would do for a hurricane, right? You can't, the roads aren't working. Power may be out from ice dropping the power lines. You need water, you need food, you may need a generator if the power's out. So again, the same how you prepare for one storm is often transferable to another. So again, we learn from these. Um, there's an organization called Climate Central that documents every $1 billion economic impact, weather or climate disaster. This was from last year. You can see, like I said, disasters are very expensive for the communities and for the broader, the government and the communities around them, the individuals that are impacted. This doesn't include a single hurricane either. If we had some hurricanes make landfall, then we would have had multiple more weather disasters. But you can see it's wildfires and drought out west. It's tornadoes down the center of the country, uh, major storms and hail storms. Texas got kind of hammered with hail last spring and summer. And so, again, these costs are individual and local economies, our government response, and these are only really increasing. Some of the one of the kind of rules of thumb that we've heard, we've learned from climate scientists the last couple decades is that wet places get wetter and dry places get drier with climate change. So areas that are arid and don't get a lot of rain are getting less rain, and those areas that tend to be rainy are getting more and more water than we can handle. We've definitely seen that borne out. In the United States with increased drought and wildfires out in the western states and a lot of floods in the heartland and in the south. With sea level rise, we can expect increased flooding and storm surges. I'll kind of show a little more about storm surge, intensifying hurricanes and expansion of the season. We don't really expect more hurricanes than we have because we already get a lot, but more intense ones, stronger ones that may include more rain, more wind. We're seeing more Category 5 storms as some intense storms have creeped into uh, early June and gone well into the fall. There's been talk of expanding the season into May instead of June 1st. And I've even heard people talking about the creation of a Category 6 storm. Last year, there were 3 Category 5s formed, which is the most on the full record, besides the year 2005. We had a lot of hurricanes in 2005, almost as possibly more than 2004. Again, more frequent droughts and wildfires, and then heavier rains that increase flooding. Um, the heat, of course, is the most noticeable issue. The 10 warmest years in the historic record, which have been kept since 1850, have all occurred in the past 10 years. So each year we're breaking the record. It's the warmest record in history. It's the warmest record in history every single year. Um, right now, I know in my county we've got a heat advisory. It's going to be 90, 95 degrees outside with heat indexes from 100 to 118. So our emergency response folks have been letting people know that that's coming through. It's a little bit of an example of sea level rise just in my region. We've been keeping track. There's a large port here, and they've had a sea level gauge that's been in place since the 1920s. And on average, has been rising since that time frame about a twelfth of an inch per year. So steady, not a lot, about 10 inches total. But then in 2010, they've started noticing that we're getting a half inch of rise per year in this part of the Gulf, and that's happening in several stretches of the Gulf. They're trying to figure out why, but that increase in the rate of rise is problematic. I know a lot of regions in the state are getting sunny day flooding. Just with high tide, it floods instead of having a storm induce it. It's just the high tide because the sea has risen so much in that particular area. Um, Part of the impact of that is some of the stormwater outfalls back up. So where the stormwater would normally flow out into the water, when the sea rises, it backs up into those stormwater drains, and so the water comes back up. I've seen that in our area when it's rained and it's flooding, but there's nowhere for the water to go, and so the drains start popping up in the air, shooting up because there's nowhere for the water to go. And of course, with sea level rise, as it floods, the flooding goes further inland. Example being this storm surge diagram where you've got mean sea level might be down there, that bottom line, and a 2 foot, a normal high tide may be ranging a foot or two on a given day. But if you've got a hurricane come through, storm surge is basically the water from offshore is just pushing water onshore. It's just momentum is built up and it's moving inland. And so you have these huge storm surges. But if you have sea level rise additional to the water level, then it's going to go up further than it would have been and move further inland as the flooding heads that way. And then, as a reminder, it's not just the United States dealing with this, it's the entire world that is working with the changes in climate we've seen. Insane heat waves in Europe the last few years, record temperatures in the Arctic and Antarctic. So, again, we're not alone with this. This is a worldwide issue. And then finally, kind of looking at drought. Uh, about a month ago, the Panhandle was yellow and orange on this drought monitor, but we got a lot of rain over the summer, and so we get the most rain in the state, about 65 inches, but it's getting closer to 70. But everybody else is dealing with abnormally dry to extreme drought conditions. And again, I know this is leading to wildfires. There's impacts on crops and livestock, on your home landscape. There may be water restrictions. So drought again affects a wide breadth of the community. So how do we prepare? I've done kind of the doom and gloom, but there are things we can do to deal with it. So that's what the rest of this is. So now you know what the issues are. How do we prepare? So the first thing I would point you to is this homeowner's handbook to prepare for natural disasters. This is a document that was a collaboration between a number of organizations, including IFAS Extension and Sea Grant. There are customized versions of this handbook for all of the states along the water. I think the Gulf states, mostly Texas. So there's a Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, version. Um, and you can find it. There are limited hard copies floating around the state. You can check with your extension office and see if anybody has a hard copy. But you can also find it online. You can scan this QR code with your camera and it'll link to this same link here. We'll also send those links out. But it's really good information for homeowners. It's particularly good for somebody new to the state who has not lived through hurricanes or tropical storms, but there's a lot of good information even for veterans of Florida living. Just to give you an example, what it covers, it goes through all the different types of coastal and natural hazards that you might deal with. It goes into emergency preparedness, how to deal with it, what things mean, what the electricity and power issues, mental and physical health, and then practical stuff that you can do to strengthen your home and your property, which I'll give you examples of in these next few minutes. But so again, it's pretty detailed. It's about a 130-page document. And so there's a lot of information in there. So from that publication, probably the top 5 tips I pulled from it and that it recommends are one, to create a disaster kit. I will talk more about what to have in there. Have an evacuation plan. It depends on where, like for a hurricane, for example, it depends on where it's coming from, where you want to evacuate. Up here in the Panhandle, if it's looking like it might be to the west, I'm not going to evacuate to New Orleans because they might get hit. I'm going to head toward Tallahassee. But if it's coming toward Tallahassee, then maybe will go west, right? And so having a couple of options. Are you going north? Are you moving south? Are you heading east or west? Do you have somewhere to go that's safe? Maintaining insurance, home insurance, car insurance. Know that flood and homeowner policies are separate. Not everybody gets flood insurance. It's recommended for, anywhere it rains, it can flood. So we recommend it, and it's less expensive if you're not in a designated flood zone. I think there'll be a lot more discussion later in this series on that. But having that, and keep in mind that if a hurricane's approaching or in the Gulf, for those of us on the Gulf side, windstorm insurance can't be purchased if you don't already have it. So make sure you already have it. Strengthening your home and using professionals for those upgrades and repairs, and knowing your neighbors. I don't know that I've ever seen this in a book, but this is my own personal lesson that I've taken to heart, is knowing your neighbors. These disasters are extremely local to begin with. Nobody's coming to save you. The EMS can't be deployed during dangerous conditions during certain rates of wind. So if a tree falls on your house at 2 a.m. and it's raining and flooding, you're going to need somewhere to be able to run to get out of there. So it's important to know your neighbors and have communication and talk before. Hey, if you need help, come over here. Have that sort of agreement. These are the people who help cut a tree and get it off of your roof, who'll get it out of your driveway so you can leave. These are the people helping you, who will share food and water when you have a storm. So get to know your neighbors. Again, these people will be, that's one of again, another silver lining after the hurricanes that I've been through, is how, immediate neighbors come out and help each other, because you're all you've got. It's going to be a while before anybody else can get there and help. And in fact, the phrase the emergency planners often uses the first 72 or on you, the first 72 hours after a natural disaster. Usually you're going to have to be on your own. So have, 3 days worth of stuff available to keep you and your family afloat. You want to keep your important papers. I keep mine in one place in a portable waterproof container. So if I need to get up and haul in the middle of the night and it's raining and pouring, I've got those titles, the family records, the anything like that in one place. And get cash out. If the power's down and the ATMs aren't working, credit card machines aren't working, internet probably isn't working. And so if you need to buy something, have some cash on you in case your phones and credit cards are not working. Basics in a hurricane kit. The things you're going to be without are light and water and food that you can't have accessible. So radio gets you information. So you're going to need flashlight, radio, cooler for any perishables, plenty of water. Pro tip, and longer term residents than me had reminded me we're to do laundry before the power goes out. So you've got clean clothes. It's going to be hot and you're going to be sweating and you're going to be working in the yard and you're not going to have air conditioning for maybe a week or two after a hurricane. So have plenty of clean clothes, medications, of course, something to do, and everything you need for your kids or your pets. There's a lot of little diagrams of how to prepare. If you put disaster kit in any kind of search engine, you'll get a lot of information. This is one little infographic put together by IPIS on preparing for water and having emergency numbers and what kind of things you need. Kind of switching over to fire and drought preparation. There's whole curriculum on fire-wise landscaping, and if you talk with some of your horticulture agents, they can probably provide this kind of information as well. One of those things is defensible space. You can see this picture on the far right. That's a home with rock mulch instead of wood up against the house, and wood mulch, they've got rocks, and they often recommend about 30 feet between your home and a tree line. So in case the canopy catches fire, it's got some distance that you can that you or the fire department can use to keep that fire away from your home. Using landscape plants that are high moisture content, so this like yucca and aloe and other plants like this, agave, that have a lot of moisture in them already. They're less likely to burn. They're used to dry conditions. So anything that's considered a drought tolerant plant is probably a good choice. Keep it in mind if you have a fire pit or a grill, has safety with those so you don't accidentally start a fire yourself. And then of course lightning. I know of two people who have lost their homes to lightning strikes. One from a gas line being struck outside their home, and the lightning following it into the house, which is kind of just a freak accident. But we had some neighbors not long ago, about 2 weeks ago, lose their house to a lightning storm. It was just a typical little summer storm, but there was a good bit of lightning and it hit their roof and they lost their house. So anything you can do to keep your house safe, and the people around you too. They had a quick response, and so nobody adjacent to that home lost their house. But there are a lot of things you can do to keep your home safe in a fire and a wildfire situation. The Again, having an evacuation plan is also important for fire, because there are times when officials are going to say you've just got to get out. Let's see. Let me get mine to advance here. So then looking at wind mitigation. So if windstorms are really one of the top issues, and wind mitigation for a home or community is essentially prevention of damage by wind. Having storm shutters, having proper roofing, having connections from all the way around what they call the envelope of the home, so the roof to the wall and the walls down to the foundation. Wind-rated garage doors. This is a house in Pensacola that's in a flood-prone area, and so you can see they're built up on pretty significant pilings, and it's actually these concrete arches, and the home hangs from the metal girders there. It's a really interesting construction style, but it is very wind resistant. The building that I work in, that I'm speaking from right now, is a wind mitigation building. It was designed to withstand a Category 5 hurricane, And so we've got a lot of demonstration materials in and outside the building. On the left, you can see the tie downs, those metal clips that attach your roof and your to the wall, and then the wall down to the foundation. Those are things that can be done after the fact. If you have an older home that wasn't built with those can be added later. Um, the window there is an impact resistant glass. So if you have these projectiles flying around in the wind or a hurricane, it can withstand some pretty high winds and sharp objects. There's a lot of different types of shutters, from these aluminum ones to the wooden ones, to fabric shield, which is a type of kind of reinforced fabric that can go over window coverings and withstand impacts. The main thing with shutters is that you just have something on every opening, every door and window, because if there's one weak point, then the wind and rain can get in that one point. So you want to be consistent. On the far right, this is a tornado shelter. Again, tornadoes are, we think about kind of the Midwest, and then there's a lot in Mississippi and Alabama, but they spin off of hurricanes, and then periodically come with just spring storms. And this is an above ground tornado shelter. It's just a steel box, essentially. Most of us, the water table is too high to have a basement in our homes. So this one's designed to be above ground. So if you don't have a basement, again, this is something that you could use as a restroom or a laundry room. It's supposed to be integrated into a home. And it's just a spot that you would stay for like 15 or 20 minutes while a tornado is actively coming through your community. This is not somewhere you would stay for a hurricane or whatever. But it, again, was designed over in Texas, and could be, the only thing left if a tornado hits a neighborhood. This thing would still be there. With roof types, if you have a choice in how your home is constructed, if you're building a house or you're moving into someplace new, there are types of construction that are better than others. Those gable-ended roofs, the kind of up there on the top left, that's kind of that traditional home, but there's more uplift on a roof, and it's a lot easier for hurricane force winds to damage your roof. If you have these hip roofs where they kind of slope on the edges, or even the pyramid roof where it's sloping all four directions, the wind can move around there a lot easier. And so those are recommended in construction now. Metal roofs are pretty reliable. Those are newer, but and a little more expensive, but can last you a good bit of a long time. Flooding, again, you need to know if you're in a flood zone, or if there's flood water headed your way. You need to know if you're in an evacuation zone. So listening, paying attention to social media and, emergency apps, that sort of thing. There are things you can do. Again, this is that storm that came through my neighborhood 10 years ago. Nobody was really prepared. Of course, nobody had flood insurance. Almost nobody had flood insurance. It was not a flood zone. And so a lot of people had to give up their homes because they couldn't afford the repairs. But there are things you can do. This link here, floodsmart.gov, is links to the National Flood Insurance Program. Can give you estimates and on what policies would cost. So there are a few things. This is just another, flooded area. Some of the mitigation you can do. This barrier on the left, we actually have one of these for our office, our extension office. It was unfortunately built at the bottom of a slope. And so we flood periodically. We've got a French drain that handles some of the rainwater, but now we have one of these big inflatable barriers that you fill with water. And, it seems ironic that you would have something full of water to keep flood water from getting you, but they work. And our building is so big that we have to have the fire department come fill up the barrier. But they work kind of like sandbags. It's just, a different type. And those are available for individual homeowners. This picture on the right, those metal, there you see the little openings there that have a little metal flap. This is a storage shed at a kind of low-lying piece of property where there's a summer camp, and these are flow-through openings. So um, if you're in a flood-prone area, it allows if water goes in, it allows water to flow out. I've seen these in the bottom floors of homes that are primarily up on pilings in their storage areas, in garages. But it keeps that water from building up inside an enclosed area and blowing the doors off. It allows the water to leave. You can see also this area has the rock mulch, uh, kind of as a dry bio retention area. Home hardening. This is a photo. Our 4-H agent, his parents actually, this is their home. They lived in Live Oak. They had a storm coming, and they did not have enough wood. They did not have major shutters, so this is what they did to harden their home. It actually worked. We don't necessarily recommend nailing your rocking chairs to the wall, but if that's what you got, use what you have. Um, Elevating homes is important. You can see this photo here. This is Dolphin Island over in Alabama. All of these homes are on the beach, but it is a highly eroding area. They've had sea level rise issues, of course, lots of storms, and essentially no dunes left anymore. And so these homes are just one hurricane away from being gone. But this is a pretty dramatic example of trying to withstand and be resilient against some pretty powerful forces. Um, Tree damage, again, is a big issue. Pines can be pretty bad, slash pines. We lost a lot of them in the pine industry during all of our storms, but being aware of the trees you have. There is wind resistant landscaping. There's information we've got on the most wind resistant species, the best ones, regardless of where you live. Consider planting. Do you want tall trees adjacent to your house, or do you need shorter, smaller trees? Are you maintaining those trees? Are they healthy? Is there decay? Are there branches dying? So being able to maintain those. This was Hurricane Sally. This was just a Category 2 6 years ago in Pensacola, but this is directly across the street. You can see that tree fell and took some power lines with it, and it's a lot of work and a lot of hassle. So you don't want to get rid of all your trees. There's too many benefits, but you want to consider the site conditions. You want to get a grades and standards, or how they rank trees that are sold, and so you want to have make sure you're getting a good quality tree when you plant something new, and look at the wind resistance. Some of the findings after the 1995 and 2004 hurricane seasons, several horticulture experts and arborists with the University of Florida did surveys throughout the state to see if there were consistencies in which species and what the impacts were of tree fall. And Erin and Opal in 95, most of the damage was laurel oak and these three types of pine. In Ivan, about 20% of the trees that fell damaged property, and of those, almost 3/4 of them damaged major property. So, how home damages, power lines, enclosures, automobiles. So, uh, if you lost a tree, it often caused serious damage, which is again why people started cutting trees down. But the ones causing the most damage were consistently the same thing. It was pines, pecans, tulip poplars, and then laurel and water oaks. Um, Laurel and water oaks are common because they're kind of fast growing oak trees that provide a lot of shade, but they don't have a long lifespan. And so those can be problematic. Some of the surveys were consistent in finding these were some of the 5 most wind resistant species. I think these grow throughout the state. They're mostly slow growing, and they have, the way they grow and the shape of the trees resist the wind impact. The palms are sort of bendy. The live oaks have windy, slow growing, dense wood. The magnolias have that pyramid shape that the wind can kind of move around them. Same with some of the hollies. And so this was a chart of one of the of how those trees kind of bore out from the greatest wind resistance to the least. This was for North Florida. There's a list like this for South Florida too that have more of the sort of subtropical species. But again, there's a lot of research on this. If you Google University of Florida trees and hurricanes or go to this site, there's a whole kind of short course on this. It's such a prevailing issue throughout the state. So it gives you a lot of information on before a storm, after, how to create an urban forest that's wind resistant. Lots and lots of information. So highly commend that website to you for tree issues. Also for your home, I think about 5 years ago, the Florida legislature created the My Safe Florida Home program, and this provides funding, provides free wind mitigation inspections, and then some funding through grants for those home upgrades that I talked about. That's the name of the program. This QR code goes to their website. The upgrades include all the things that I mentioned already about withstanding, improving the strength of your roof, the attachments, those hurricane clips, water resistance for roofs, opening protection. So that's garage doors, windows, and doors. And so it gives Florida homeowners up to $10,000 in grant assistance if you're eligible and approved. So if you're to be eligible, you have to be able to answer yes to all of these questions. This is just a short quiz. Have you gotten this inspection report? That's something that they'll give you the instructions on how to do. Do you have an insurance policy? Do you have a home built before 2008? So newer homes are not eligible. Most of them should be built with this stuff. And then final inspection, that sort of thing. So you have to be able to say yes to all of these. The funding is limited, but they keep re-upping it. So definitely recommend checking that out. And also the Resilient Florida grants. This is more of a community level instead of an individual resilience. These are available to municipalities throughout the state to address flooding and sea level rise, and includes vulnerability assessments and storm and sea level mitigation projects. Again, that's the link and the QR code to get to those. If your community hasn't applied for one of these, tell your elected officials, your city and county staff, there's money sitting out there. You can see up in Pensacola, up in Northwest Florida, our county has gotten 10 of these grants in the last few years. The city has gotten 7. These are all used for stormwater improvements, living shorelines, flood mitigation projects. You can see there's a pretty good representation throughout the state. Most counties have gotten some of these. There's a few there in North Central, I see, that haven't, but this is significant money that's available to communities for exactly this kind of stuff. So again, if you aren't hearing that your community is applying for these, encourage them to do so, because they're trying to get this money out to help mitigate for it. So in conclusion, I'll leave some time for questions, but resilience is basically the ability to learn from the past and return to normal, or to better than normal, ideally. We are prone to natural disasters and some man-made ones in this state, but there are ways to prepare, and there's a lot of resources available, through us with Extension, but throughout your city and county too. Again, we'll send these links out, but these are just the ones I use for this presentation. All of these links stay updated. The daily drought monitor is every week. The new grants and My Florida Home information is updated. Division of Emergency Management has a lot of these have iPhone or just smartphone apps as well, so you can access them that way. We also have a program called Climate Smart Floridians. So this is sort of an offshoot of. It goes more in depth into climate issues, energy savings, how to be more sustainable as an individual. And so we do offer this Climate Smart Floridians program if you're interested in that. We have offered it as a lunch and learn like this before, but we do local classes too. So there's an interest form here if you're interested. Um, Again, here's the schedule. Next week we'll look more at risk of disasters and how to assess that. But we hope that you will join us for the next several Monday lunchtime series. Invite friends; they can still register for more of these. And we hope that we have a good turnout. Um, and with that, I will take any questions. Holly, I'm sure you've been monitoring the chat. But if you want to let me know what people are asking or if people want to unmute, I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Carrie. That's a great intro into our entire series. And I've been adding links to all the things that you were talking about into the chat. So I don't think, I think we answered people's questions that had come in. One person had asked, you had talked about the metal tie down straps for the roofs.
Yeah.
And there was just a question about whether or not they can be added like after the fact, which Alicia said she believed they could. And I also think that's true. I didn't know if you had something else to say.
Yeah, those can definitely be added after the fact. That's one of the things that that grant would cover. And I know is a fairly simple thing and less expensive thing that you can do to an older home that doesn't have those. So yeah, they can definitely be added.
Yeah, Alicia, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that if like myself, you found that your insurance went up this year, make sure to call your insurance agent. What I found was somehow, although I have a home that was built in 2008, none of my supporting documentation carried through from last year to this year. Miraculously, it just disappeared. And so I was able to have pay for, it was a couple $100, a wind mitigation company to come, and it immediately dropped my annual fee for my windstorm by like $400. So, don't be afraid to call and make sure every year that, they have all the credits you're available to you, or like the tie downs we were talking about, if you don't have them, that have the opportunity to add them and get the credits for those.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Alicia. Yeah, it's a huge savings if you can get that wind mitigation inspection. They will give you credit on your insurance and a discount, and that's one of the reasons I think as well that there's resilient. My Florida Home program was started to help people afford that, so that they can get that discount and be more ready. Um, I see this question on the covered patio. Um, I don't know exactly what you would do for that. There may be, I mean, that's a pretty big, you know, um, investment to have some sort of covering. I would need to do a little digging to see what the best thing to do with those are. Um, does any other agents have any experience with covered patios and their um, enclosing those? I mean, I have seen some pretty substantial metal shutters. There are some that you can get that are um, electronic. You basically hit a button and it rolls down. It's like a big, almost garage door kind of thin thing that goes around bigger doors. You can do those on windows, and I've seen people do them on like second and third floor shutters if it's hard to physically access it. something like that would probably be the easiest thing. It would be very difficult to go in and manually cover an entire um, patio like that. Um, I assume you're talking about like an enclosed, like a pool enclosure. Um, if it's just your front porch, your front patio, you just take everything off the patio and let it be. But if you're talking about a pool enclosure type thing, that would be different. That's one of the things we didn't expect with the snow that we got. Um, the the snow took out a lot of pool enclosures in Pensacola because they were not strong enough to withstand the weight of the snow. Nobody really thought about that.
Yeah, good point, Carrie. I don't have anything else to add, but it's a good question.
Thanks, Siobhan, for the feedback there.
I do want to launch before if you have other questions, please do put them in the chat, but I do want to launch an end of poll. So I'm going to put that out and you'll see a pop-up. You can just answer these couple of questions for us before you hop off. But if you do have any other questions, please do put them in the chat and we can um, answer them. We still have a couple more minutes. And if you do have to hop off, we hope to see you at another session. Again, this is just the first of 6 weeks, and we have a lot of great topics still to go. If there's still time for people to register, if they missed this one, they can still register for the future sessions. We did record this, and we'll be working on putting this up online so we can send out the link to everyone who registered. And that will also be give you the availability to share with others too. So once we get that up, so we'll be working on that this week and get that sent out to people who registered as soon as we can.
You're welcome. Thank you all for being part of this.
Yeah, thank you for joining today. Don't see any other questions. So I guess we will see all of you next week, hopefully. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you all again.